going on, everybody? We're just going to get right into this. Biden is set to meet with U.S. financial regulators on Monday. This was released on Axios over the weekend. We're still waiting to get some word from this, but I think this has a lot to do with some of the price action we're seeing. Also, Wall Street, K Street, Congress, and beyond have signaled to financial regulators their interest in influencing new federal climate disclosure requirements. The SEC plans to begin formal rulemaking later this year. With Washington recommitted to innovation, cryptocurrencies need a congressional fix. This is a great article. Congress achieved a rare bipartisan feat in passing the Endless Frontier Act through the Senate. This bold legislative package recommits to the U.S. to technological innovation and global leadership in the race against Chinese domination. At the very least, Republicans and Democrats understand that the U.S. must do more to win this fight. However, unless the Biden administration and Congress change their current attention deficit on cryptocurrencies, America's effort may be in vain. Beneath the headlines and outside of the halls of Congress, federal bureaucrats are actively circumventing Congress and using the courts to regulate the U.S. cryptocurrency industry. The total lack of regulatory clarity in the Securities Act is the main culprit, and consensus is building. This is especially evident to observers of the Securities and Exchange Commission. December's 2020 lawsuit against San Francisco-based enterprise software company Ripple over its distribution of the cryptocurrency XRP. The SEC's case stood on questionable grounds since day one, coming as an 11th hour announcement from the now former SEC chairman Jay Clayton. He'd spent much of his tenure insisting that the SEC did not provide regulatory clarity to this rapidly evolving tech space, allowing the agency to take arbitrary, often contradictory stances from one day to the next on different digital tokens. This put companies in a confusing morass of uncertainty, which Clayton ultimately exploited when the lawsuit was filed on his last day in office. The SEC based its lawsuit on the same outdated principle that has plagued much of the cryptocurrency space over the last decade, the Howey test. It is a byproduct of a 1946 Supreme Court decision centered on two Florida citrus groves and has been used to define what is and is not a security based on standards set close to a century ago. The suit alleges that the sale of XRP over 7 years ago were one long unregistered securities trade, which the company and its executives should have known from the beginning. But the agency itself had publicly said for years it wasn't able to draw the conclusion, as billions of tokens were being traded all over the world by investors who had no connection to the company. The basic premise of the lawsuit on its face is a stretch that challenges logic. Businesses develop innovative solutions on blockchain ledgers that become decentralized through wide token distributions. They can't get out of the gate if the SEC is going to swing its sledgehammer for distributions that happened 7 years ago. This is what makes such a glaring example of regulatory overreach. Recent calls to establish a more appropriate standard for technologically complex digital assets have turned into a firestorm since the Ripple case was filed. Some tech policy experts closely following the case have called for a Ripple test to replace Howey, but that shouldn't be left up to the courts. Congress has to get off the sidelines once and for all, and urgently. The new SEC chairman Gary Gensler acknowledged in recent testimony before the House that it is only Congress that could really address the regulatory clarity question. Right now, the exchanges trading in these cryptos assets do not have a regulatory framework either at the SEC or our sister agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, he pointed out. This comes against the backdrop of China rolling out its own sovereign digital currency, the digital yuan, that copies all the features of a cryptocurrency: cheap, fast, and reliable, but with the usual Chinese characteristics. A closed ledger that allows the Chinese state to monitor every aspect of a user's daily life. With Chinese tech giants looking to dominate the fintech space ahead of Western crypto industry disruptors, any more congressional foot-dragging only kneecaps our best and brightest firms as they try to pull ahead. At a time when both the White House and Congress are aligned to use the government's power to protect American interests, Congress needs to get the SEC and the rest of the regulatory agencies in line on cryptocurrencies. Bipartisan action is quite possible as consensus is emerging that protecting both investors and innovators are urgent concerns. So you can see that this narrative overall is starting to build. It's changing slowly. It doesn't feel like it all the time, but it is. Listen to what this guy has to say.
Look, I'm glad the president's meeting with his regulators because, this space has needed attention for some time. Frankly, we're talking crypto especially, but the whole state of financial regulation is having a hard time keeping up with the fintech, innovation that is, moving much faster than regulators can. So I think one of the big things that he has to talk about is how do we do federal policy that makes it clear what is a security and what is not. That's Gensler with the SEC. You have XRP, for example. is a cryptocurrency that could be very useful for the payment system. But Ripple, how separate and distinct is that as an entity? And if they exercise a lot of control over it, it might look a lot like a security. But if there truly is a firewall there, it might look like it's not a security. And we've tried for a long time to get a bright line test there to make it so it's less subjective for regulators. And, one of the encouraging things is Gensler really understands that. He taught blockchain courses at MIT prior to taking this current role. So it's good that he has some expertise there, and hopefully he'll listen and have good dialogue.
So you got that. And listen to this. Now keep in mind, this is Hester Pierce here. She is one of the SEC commissioners.
That leads to the question, XRP has been on the market for 8 years. When does a digital asset become a security or maybe something else? And how does the SEC determine that?
Well, I think that is a difficult question. And it's something that I've also, again, tried to get us to be a little bit more precise. When we think about a crypto asset, a digital asset as being a security, what we're doing is we're saying that we think it's being sold as part of an investment contract, which means that there are promises being made around the sale of that asset. It doesn't mean that the asset itself necessarily has to be a security. It means that it was being sold as a security. Then the question becomes, at what point can someone sell that asset not as a security? And that is a very difficult line.
So that leads to the question.
So you have that, and then this. I shared this in another video, but I didn't really get into it. And it's, did opportunists in the U.S. cede to China cryptocurrency like others did biowarfare technology? So this is awesome. I mean, you have Bitcoin and Ethereum right there. Here's the SEC, and there's Ripple underneath all of it. You guys should read this article. It's awesome. It's on the Gateway Pundit. If you Google crypto biowarfare technology Ripple or something, just something out of that title, you'll be able to find it. It's really good stuff, though. It's starting to hit the mainstream a little more. The article that I had shared with you guys was the Seeking Alpha article that I believe they referenced somewhere right in the beginning. Yep, right here. Make sure you guys check out this article. It's got a lot of good information in it. I'm not going to go through it because I've shared all this stuff already, but I just wanted to let you know that it's gaining steam in the news world. And then let's go back to this. This was shared by, tweeted out by Digital Asset Investor. This was before Clayton was sworn in. Elizabeth Warren was very skeptical of his position for several reasons, and this will outline some of it for you here. It's a little bit of foresight.
Let's start by looking at how we would lead the SEC's enforcement efforts against Wall Street. How we would be as a cop on the beat. Under ethics rules, for the first half of his term, Mr. Clayton cannot participate in any enforcement action that involves one of his former clients. That means he cannot take part in any case against Goldman Sachs. Okay, but there's more. Goldman Sachs is just one of his former big bank clients. Mr. Clayton also can't take action against Deutsche Bank or against UBS or against Barclays. These are some of Wall Street's biggest and most egregious repeat offenders, and Mr. Clayton would be barred from enforcing the law against them. And that's not all. Ethics rules also prevent Mr. Clayton from participating in any enforcement case against a party that is represented by his former law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell. Now, Sullivan and Cromwell is a premier Wall Street firm with a long client list that includes big banks like JP Morgan Chase and credit ratings agencies like Moody's. That means there'll likely be even more cases against top Wall Street firms that Mr. Clayton can't work on. Now, here's why that matters so much. For most enforcement actions, it takes a majority vote of the 5 SEC commissioners. In other words, it takes 3 people to advance an enforcement action. In a number of recent cases, the 2 Democrats have voted for stronger enforcement, and the 2 Republicans have voted against it. If the chairman can't vote and Mr. Clayton can't vote if some of the biggest and most disreputable banks are involved, then the commission is likely to come up short of the necessary 3 votes. You know what that means? It means the banks walk free.
I don't know about you, but it stinks, man. This whole thing stinks. The banks walk free, Bitcoin walks free, Ethereum walks free, Ripple doesn't. But is a Ripple settlement coming soon? Legal expert reveals when XRP lawsuit could conclude. And this is through Jeremy Hogan. He's great. You should follow him on Twitter and YouTube as well. He basically says no settlement will happen until after the close of discovery. Could it settle before then? Sure. It's just not likely. Any settlement would likely be after the close of fact discovery, and then as early September and even possibly as late as October 16th. If it doesn't settle then, I believe the 2 main issues will be decided by the Judge Torres as a summary judgment, and he believes that the summary judgment would probably ring out until early 22, around January or so. He does not see any reason why the SEC would want to rush on this case. The more time that goes by, the better the SEC's settlement position, because the more pain for Ripple. I see it every day in my firm, as most of my clients are fighting large insurance companies, and there's nothing they like better than to kill my clients with time. It's a very common tactic. Another thing I wanted to show you guys, I know there's been a lot of worry going on, and I saw this pointed out on a blockchain backer, and he was talking about how this how the crypto market really does tie to the Dow Jones market, to the stock market, big time. A lot of people don't think it does. Some people think it's contrary, but the money all flows in the same channels. So you'll see here, May 10th was pretty much the beginning of this drop off, right? Boom, it just destroyed crypto. Well, if you go over here and you look at the stock market, it also has, this is where the decline bang, except for it looked like this decline was more of an A, B, C correction, and generally after your C leg you get a nice push up. So although it may not be looking quite so good here, if this is any indicator, that would be great news for us. You can also see where they V-bottomed in the same few days right here and then got right back out of there. So you can see in these structures, I mean, there are similarities for sure. It's undeniable. And then this was something that I saw too. These are some of the banks who are starting to offer crypto services. A source for Bloomberg News as of June 18th. You can see that a lot of them are still saying no. You're seeing some considerations come in, and then the big boys are starting to jump in there. So, they are coming. And with that, I'm going to end the video. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a comment below, and head on a swivel, guys, because it is getting crazy.